details of the Australian report come just days after the Pentagon warned that China's nuclear arsenal would have 1,500 warheads by 2035, with Washington naming Beijing the most significant threat to the U.S. in a new assessment. The Pentagon also estimates China's operational nuclear weapons stockpile has exceeded 400. This is the first time the United States has officially acknowledged that China has deployed weapons on its nuclear-powered submarines, allowing it to attack the U.S. mainland from its shores. This open acknowledgement by Western countries demonstrates China's rapidly expanding arsenal. Military experts believe that tensions between the two sides could escalate into a full-fledged conflict. Australia is within striking distance of Chinese missiles. Artificial reefs and atolls in the South China Sea will allow China to launch a land-based DF-26 medium-range ballistic missile strike. China claims almost the entire South China Sea and has carried out a continuing militarization of the area. As a precaution against Chinese animosity, analysts and researchers have called on the Australian government to move supplies, fuel depots and potential military bases further south on the Australian mainland. It has long been the subject of discussion that China's DF-26 medium-range ballistic missile, capable of hitting targets some 3,400 miles away, could pose a threat to major U.S. military installations in the Pacific Rim. However, this is the first time Canberra has acknowledged a threat to its sovereign territory and military assets. It is important to note that the DF-26 long-range missile can also carry 3 detachable nuclear warheads and fire at different targets. In addition, it also has an anti-ship variant, the DF-21D medium-range ballistic missile, which has repeatedly made headlines for its reported potential to sink U.S. aircraft carriers. This submission is important because it comes after similar statements about Chinese missiles endangering the United States. In November, the U.S. revealed that China had installed a long-range ballistic missile aboard a nuclear submarine capable of striking the U.S., as reported by the Eurasian Times. The commander of the United States Pacific Fleet, Admiral Sam Papero, stated that China's 6 Jin-class submarines are now armed with JL-3 intercontinental ballistic missiles built to threaten the United States. The JL-3 missile has a range of over 10,000 kilometers. The mission comes at a time when tensions between Australia and China have been running high in the region despite some diplomacy between the two sides. Earlier this year, tensions came to a head when China signed a security agreement with the Solomon Islands, a tiny island nation just miles from Australia. The gloom around the deal has fueled fears that China could set up a military base 2,000 kilometers away from Canberra. Then Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison warned that a Chinese naval base in the Solomon Islands would be a red line for his country and the United States. However, both sides have come a long way despite the animosity. Last month Australian Prime Minister Albanese met Chinese President Xi Jinping in a significant breakthrough after China imposed more than $20 billion in trade strikes on Australia during years of bitter rivalry. However, it is not yet clear how far the impact of the meeting will be, considering some of the fundamental problems between the two countries. Canberra, for example, is a staunch ally of Washington. Recently, Albanians played down a federal lawmaker's visit to Taiwan for fear of provoking China after achieving some semblance of normal relations. Although relations between the two countries appear to have stabilized somewhat in recent months, underlying problems remain. NSW Liberal Senator Jim Molan recently stated that Australia had completely lost control of the South China Sea. He said that under President Xi Jinping, China had perfected the art of the so-called grey zone, which he defined as aggressive actions that do not escalate into armed war. This is especially important when viewed in the context of China's intimidation of an Australian P-8A reconnaissance aircraft earlier this year. For its part, Australia's ambitions to acquire nuclear submarines under the AUKUS arrangement have been painfully slow. China's security pact with the Solomon Islands and its agreement with the Pacific Island countries has changed Australia's geopolitical and security calculations. While using diplomacy to achieve stability in relations with Beijing, Canberra continues to face challenges posed by its expansion and aggressiveness in the Indo-Pacific region.